Lord Meher, 1923. Within a few days, the manzil was restored to its original condition. Still remaining with Baba were his brother Jalbai, his uncle Masaji, his cousin Espandiar, Ali Sr., and Ali's brother Rustam, Babu Saikalwala, Bailey, Baidul, Barso, Baramji, Ferdun, Nervis, Gustaji, and his brother Slamson. Each man was engaged most of the time in selling the Marathi edition of Upasni Maharaj's biography by Nath Madhav, which Circle and Company had recently published. Footnote says, the Marathi title was Sri Sachidananda Sadguru Upasni Maharaj Shri Charitra. Sadashif Patil had also contributed some details of Maharaj's life, which Maharaj had dictated to him. In Madhav's introduction, dated 31 December 1922, he mentions that his work is based on the Urdu conversion Gariban Ka Asara. The previous October.
Garibo Ka Asra. That means the help for the poor people.
I think that's the version that Baba had done.
Previous October, Baba had led the Mandali to Kalyan to visit the shrine of Haj Malang Shah, but failing to reach it, he had vowed to revisit the tomb of the great Mohammedan saint. To fulfill this promise, the master, with the remaining Mandali, went to Kalyan from Bombay on Friday, 13 April 1923, in the middle of the night, around 1:30 a.m. Only Bailey and Kashanath, the laundryman, remained at the manzil. Ghani, Ramju, and Kaksaheb met Baba and the group at Kalyan, according to previous instructions. At 2:30 in the morning, they left Kalyan and Tongas for the high hill where the saint's tomb was situated. Reaching its base, Baba stayed there with Sadashif Patil and sent the rest of the men up the mountain to bow down and offer homage at the tomb on his behalf. The men placed a jali of flowers on the saint's dargah, or tomb. They also recited the Fatiha as instructed by Baba. Footnote here says, the Fatiha is a Mohammedan supplication asking God to guide one through the straight path. The excursion took 2.5 hours. When they returned, Baba gave them bread and sweets to eat, but forbade them to drink water. They were thirsty after the long hike and were only thinking of water when they reached where Baba was waiting. Contrary to their expectations, he handed them dry bread and sweets, but they could not relish this prasad as their throats were so dry. Baba explained that the water there was polluted. Then they rode in the Tongas on the return journey. It was intensely hot, as this was the month of April, the middle of India's summer. Their thirst increased during the bumpy ride, and after covering 14 miles, they reached Kalyan in the afternoon. They were permitted to quench their thirst with soda water. Baba then handed each slices of watermelon, and they were satisfied at last. Baba and the men took a local train back to Bombay, while Ramju and Ghani returned to Lanavla. Next page. Mona, I need the next page.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it. Marvin, do you want to do your screen share? Because I would be struggling with this. Okay, I got it.
I can after this. I'll pull mine up if you want.
Okay.
But as Baba alighted from the taxi and approached the manzil, he stopped abruptly and remained motionless for a few moments. Bailey, who had been waiting on the veranda, noted the smile vanished from Baba's face, and instead it wore a look of seriousness mingled with sadness. Baba said, "In my absence, someone has performed a devilish act in this house. The manzil has been rendered impure." All were surprised, and everyone's gaze fell on Bailey. Baba walked towards him and repeated what he had said. Bailey vigorously denied the charges and stated that he and Kashinath had been alone all day. Only the Matrani, the toilet sweeper woman, had entered the compound. Baba repeated the charge. Exasperated, Bailey blurted out, "Since you are all-knowing and know that some impure act has been committed, you should also be able to name the person who had committed it." Baba clarified, "I have not put my mind to this issue, nor do I want to do so. If I were to put my mind to it, the guilty person would suffer tremendously, which I do not want to happen. That is the reason I am insisting on a confession, so the person will have the opportunity of obtaining my grace and mercy, and escape from the situation with only a slight punishment, rather than having to undergo a terrible one. The knowledge of the impure act has been committed at the manzil is not because of my applying my mind to it. I have sensed it intuitively the moment I entered the manzil." Baba confronted Kashinath, but he too proclaimed his innocence. Both Bailey and Kashinath were given an hour to think over their statements, at the conclusion of which Baba said he would be forced to announce the guilty party. "If I am compelled to do this," he warned, "the culprit will suffer tremendously throughout his life. He will become a leper, and there will be no cure or redress. He will lose his right for seeking my pardon or mercy. No pleading, begging, or banging of your head will be of any avail then. The time for pardon will have elapsed, and the guilty party will have lost all opportunity for being saved." Baba went upstairs to his room, and after an hour summoned all there. He declared that although the period of 1 hour had finished, he did not feel it appropriate to put his mind into this seedy and impure act. He added, "Just as the sinner," I can't quite see, "just as the sinner will suffer for this act, I too will have to suffer. So with folded hands, I beg the sinner to confess his sin. That way he will not only show mercy toward himself, but also towards me, and save both of us from great suffering and be relieved. For that reason, I am giving 1 more hour for him to take the right decision and close the matter. I wish and pray that Kudapak, God Almighty, grants you Nek Budi, wisdom, and Rudy Tafiat, divine guidance." Baba declared that the matter would be discussed at the Gutta in an hour. Bailey describes what transpired at the meeting. From Bailey. After a moment's silence, Baba spoke in a low, sad voice. One more time, he re-emphasized his warning and asked the sinner to boldly come forward and frankly confess the act. He begged that this very last and final warning be heeded. Then, in a very serious tone, he said that he was being compelled to be very strict and firm, and so the result would be tremendous. Once he was obliged to put his mind in the case, the result would surely be terrible for the sinner. No pardon could be given thereafter, even if the sinner dies banging his head. He would not qualify for the slightest mercy or pardon. Thereafter, there will be no question of him remaining as my disciple, Baba said. He will not even be connected with me. Once I am compelled to declare the sinner, no other member of the Gutta will ever speak his name. That much I am stating beforehand. The person will have to leave the manzil at once, and in the future too, he will not be allowed to meet me or to visit me. For a while, the atmosphere was silent. All watched Baba's face intently. There were distinct changes in his face. Sadness was clearly visible. After some moments, Baba looked straight at me and asked, "Bailey, have you heard me well?" I nodded my head, indicating assent. He asked me one more time, "Tell me what you have to say. Are you innocent or guilty? Declare it now." Bailey proclaimed his innocence. Baba then shifted his gaze to Kashinath and asked him the same question. Kashinath said he too had not committed any such act. Baba was completely motionless. Finally, Baba declared that Kashinath was the sinner.
Excuse me, someone has an open, and it's disturbing. Please.
Oh, yeah, well, it's a
mute.
disturbing thing. Sorry, it was open for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes that page.
Mona, you can turn the page at the bottom of the page too. There's arrows at the bottom. Did you notice?
Either place. Okay, Mona, do you want to pick up the reading or assign someone?
Yeah, I'll read. Thank you. Not only that, but Baba revealed in detail that in the afternoon, when Metrani's daughter came for cleaning the toilets, the dhobi offered her the money given to him for his food and had sexual relations with her. Baba very sternly ordered Kashinath to leave the premises within the next 10 minutes after taking all of his belongings without uttering a single word. Behramji was ordered to escort him off the premises. Baba dispersed the gutta for what turned out to be the last time Kashinath started crying profusely and pleaded for Baba's mercy to catch his feet, but Baba walked away to his room. Behramji caught Kashinath's arm and dragged him away outside the manzil. The gates were closed from that moment on. Kashinath's name was never uttered by anyone, and the matter was not spoken of further. Despite Meher Baba's repeated warnings not to neglect his instructions, Kashinath had continued to do so. In spite of Baba's constant forgiveness for his mistakes, he brushed away the master's words and warnings. Baba had stopped asking him to do the laundry. As will be revealed, sometime later, after Kashinath was banished from the manzil, tragedy befell him, and he suffered for his disobedience, and the master as the master had foretold. Soon after Baba's return from Kalyan, notice was given to the landlord. The main house of Manzile Neem was handed over to the owner, and the small house at the back was kept for office of Circle and Company. At Baba's request, the flour mill was sold. All the men were busy packing their luggage to get ready for the journey to Ahmednagar and the beginning of a new phase of Meher Baba's work. 2 days before leaving the manzil on 17th April, Baba graced another marriage ceremony, that of Naval and Dina Talati. Baba went to their house in a tonga after the ceremonies and called the newly married couple outside on the road, where he lovingly blessed them. He then rode back to the manzil. Age smiled as the mandali prepared to vacate Manzile name and reflected on the 10 months of Baba's historic stay there. Prior to those days with Baba at Manzile Mein, Baba's relationship with the mandali had been one of close friendship. Those who acknowledged him to be their master or guru were unaware of the significance and necessity of absolute obedience to his every order. In Manzile meme, this relationship completely changed. The Mandali were made to be aware that Meher Baba was the Lord and Master, thereby establishing the relationship that exists between any spiritually perfect master and his disciples. In different ways, the Mandali learned the paramount importance of obeying Baba's instructions. He would constantly impress upon them how important it was to obey his every command, no matter how significant it might appear. In matters of spirituality, too, Meher Baba had imparted much esoteric wisdom. Through numerous discourses, the Master had outlined the inner path and divine love, explaining the wisdom of both Hindu mysticism, Vedanta, and Islamic Sufism. And the Mandli each day had grown more and more intoxicated. They were now not only dreaming of the Himalayas, spiritual heights, but the fire of enthusiasm inside them had been ignited, urging them to venture its ascent. In Manzile meme, the men had also accepted being away from their homes and thus remained detached from their families. They were given the opportunity of living with men of different religions and communities, something none of them had ever done before. In Baba's camaraderie, they were inspired to shed their various individual differences, prejudices, and respective likes and dislikes for general benefit and welfare of all. During this phase of their discipleship, Meher Baba prepared the Mandali for future strenuous training, which would not have been possible without having spent these preliminary months living with him in Manzile meme. Leaving memories behind, Meher Baba and the remaining 14 men left Manzile meme on the night of Thursday, 19th April for Ahmednagar. 19th April 1923 for Ahmednagar. The train was crowded and their compartment was packed with luggage and other passengers who did not recognize who was in their presence. None of the Mandali had any idea they were about to stay on land, which was to become the ever flowing spring of bliss. Mehrabad appeared barren and deserted at the time. Age observed, but its cooling, hidden waters would soon quench the earth's dying thirst. Several of Baba's old friends and relatives, Ramju and the Kaspa Pet Mandali, were present at the Pune railway station to joyously receive the King of Kings. Baba was profusely garlanded and the Mandali was served tea and refreshments. The train left Pune at 7:30 a.m. on 20th April and reached Ahmednagar a few hours later. Baba stayed at Khan Sahib and Gulmai's property, Khushru quarters, not far from their Sarosh Manzil residence. Khushru quarters was originally owned by the military and used as a storage facility. In 1922, it had been leased by Khan Sahib, who continued to use some portion of the buildings as a warehouse for building materials he was supplying to the military. The property is now known as Meher Nazar compound and houses the offices of Avatar Meher Baba Trust. The small room Baba occupied in 1923 was the last room in the northeast corner, which Ferrum working boxwala later occupied. Except for Gulmai's family and her nephew Sarosh, no one else in the local Zoroastrian community respected Baba as a spiritual master. Gulmai's Irani in-laws, who stayed in the large compound of Khushru quarters, constantly ridiculed Gulmai's devotion to Meher Baba. But Baba kept Gulmai and her family under the protective shelter of his Nazar. He had revealed his divinity to them to such profound extent that despite several opposition against him, they would always remain at his feet, obedient to him, no matter what. Due to her relatives' disbelief and opposition, Gulmai underwent terrible mental suffering, but she remained steadfast to Meher Baba's divine love and did not argue with them. For several days, Baba and the men walked through
Let's see it, Mona.
Yeah, I can't see, just one second. Walked through the nearby predominantly Muslim locality of Ahmednagar, exploring the area. The name Ahmad is Arabic in origin and means highly praised, or one who constantly thanks God. Although it is one of the many names of Prophet Muhammad, the town was actually named in 1494 after its founder Ahmad Nizam Shah. Also, during his stay at Khushru quarters, Baba remained scheduled in one room for 7 days, partially fasting. Gustaji and Adi, who slept at Sarosh Manzil and came to Khushru quarters in the morning, attended to his personal needs, and Gulmai prepared curry with curd, yogurt for him. Baba instructed Gulmai to keep an oil lamp burning day and night in the nearby room designated as Upasni Maharaj's. One day, Adi told his mother that Baba appeared pale and she thought it was due to fasting. Soon after, the master called her and said, I have not become weak. I do not feel any weakness. I am strong as ever. He added, I had gone to attend a meeting. Gulmai wanted an explanation, but Baba only remarked, it was a meeting of the perfect ones. Baba then began to sing to her, Sabir Tiri Kalyak Ki Nagariyan. O Sabir, your city of Kalyar is holy. The actual words of the line in reference to Ali Ahmad Sabir of Kalyar are Sabir Teri Kalyar ki Nagariyan. Baba then told Gulmal to use the room in which he had sat in seclusion for herself. One day, the local Muslim saint Gilori Shah, whom Gulmai had told Baba about, appeared at the gate of Khushru quarters. Adi saw him, but Baba told him to go inside and not approach the saint. Adi related a bit more about the saint's background. Before Baba came into our life, my mother, my brother Rustam, and I used to go to the saint, and my father also knew him. The saint, when he was in the practical life, had lived in England for a long time, where he had been employed as a cook for Queen Victoria. He knew how to prepare English style cooking, Indian cooking, and also about wines, syrups, sharbat, and other things. He knew so many types of Indian medicines. Gilori Shah, whose name given is not recorded, in his younger days had worked on a ship for many years. Then he was employed in England as a butler or cook for the Queen. When the Prince of Wales toured India, Gilori Shah accompanied him as a part of the royal entourage. Later, he came across as a guru in the Vindhya Mountains in Madhya Pradesh. He had earned a fair amount while in service and once threw away a large amount of money in the Narmada River. Thinking him to be mad, the local authorities had him committed to a lunatic asylum. He was soon freed and settled in Ahmednagar. From an article written by Rustam Irani in 1927. One day, he was fairly aged. He asked me to accompany him to Aragaon village to have a look at my father's property. At that time, we had heard about Meher Baba, but not much. Cars in those days were rare, but I hired a horse carriage and we went the 6 miles to Arangao. The saint got down exactly at the well and he said, "This place is going to be blessed by the presence of a really big man." He didn't mention Baba by name. The saint continued, "This is a very important place, and when I die, you shall tell your father that I should be buried here." He indicated the place where his tomb now stands. Thereafter, the saint never expressed a desire to me to take Baba's darshan. Though the saint knew that Baba had come into our lives, Baba did say that Gilori Shah was a real saint of the fifth plane of consciousness, who later progressed to the sixth plane. But Baba cautioned me not to go see the saint, though he had assured me that the saint's consciousness was that high. One day, the saint came to the gate of Khushru quarters and stood there waiting for me to come and greet him. At this very time, Baba was staying at Khushru quarters with this entire mandali. The saint was looking at me from that distance, and I was very attracted to go to see him. Baba was standing right opposite me, and he said, "No, you should not go. You must not go." I obeyed, and Baba said, "You go inside, and he will go away." The saint waited for a while, and seeing no response from me, he walked away. Baba related to Adi that Gilori Shah was on the sixth plane. From a talk given by Adi Sr. at Meher Baba Oceanic London in 1976 or 1977. On 30th April 1923, Baba took a long hike with the Mandali to a place called Happy Valley, situated 14 miles to the north of Ahmednagar, once a forest area. Legend has it that during Lord Ram's wanderings and exile, he, Sita, and Lakshman had stayed at the Happy Valley for some time. The legend says that Sita was either thirsty or wanted to bathe, but there was no water nearby. So Ram shot an arrow into the rocks and a stream of water began to pour out. Baba stayed in the dark bungalow, a government rest house, for 3 days. Since some of the wedding guests had accompanied them, the food being sent from Ahmednagar was not sufficient, and extra vegetables and chapatis had to be prepared. Baba spent time relaxing, playing cards or games, and listening to bhajans. During their stay in Happy Valley, Jal Bai told Baba an amusing story about Aspandier's japa, that is repetition of God's name in Manzile Me. Every morning, Jalbai said, I used to watch Aspandier sit for meditation. Due to the mosquitoes and his sleeplessness, his body would sway back and forth. He moved like a pendulum. Baba laughed at Jalbhai's description and decided it was an appropriate nickname for his cousin. Aspendier was thus christened Pendulum, which was shortened to Pandu, and he was called by that name ever after. Jalbai was always filled with humorous tales and related another. He said that Faridun was once sitting on the veranda of Manzil when, finding no one near, he passed gas so loudly, Jalbai thought a firecracker had exploded. Baba again laughed and called out to Faridun, Hey Padarya, from Gujarati word pad to fart, to which Faridun responded. Someone else chimed in, Baba, Faridun is so tall and solemn that he even looks like a padre, Catholic priest. Baba then said to Faridun, from today your name is Padri. Thus, Faridun too gained a nickname and was known as Padri for the rest of his life. One afternoon, Baba walked on the veranda and saw Padri, Slamson, and another man talking casually with the keeper of the Shiva temple. He sent someone to inquire as to what they were doing by that temple and what they were discussing. The three men went to Baba and explained that they were simply passing the time talking about God, religion, and spirituality. Very good, Baba exclaimed. All right, now the three of you take your baggage and get out. Go, make that man your guru. From this moment on, I am not your guru. Our connections are severed. Baba was extremely angry, and the three young men stood before him, frightened, pleading to be forgiven. They promised they would not do it again. You heard me. Get out of my sight, Baba shouted. With a disgusted look, he said, You act like fools. You have left your homes and dear ones to join me. You have now lived with me for more than a year. You're following me obeying my instructions. Why do you go to that temple? Never, never go to anybody else. Suppose that man gave some explanation of some kind of advice or an order contrary to mine, which would you follow? They kept quiet. Baba then extorted them. You have made me your master. In turn, I've promised you I will never let you sink. Upasni Maharaj,
Mona, please, let me break in for a second. I think maybe it'd be time to pass the reading on to someone else.
yeah, sure. Honey Bunny
Can I
or
read? Can I read, Mona?
Honey Bunny can read, or maybe Rosalie.
May I?
You know what? Meher asked to read. Go ahead, Meher. Why
Yeah.
don't you take it?
Thank you. Thank you.
Avin, I'm leaving the meeting now. You can just do share screen and I'll leave.
Upasni Maharaj's birthday was observed by Baba. Oh, sorry, by Baba. Upasni's birthday by Baba at Happy Valley on Thursday, 3rd May 1923. The Mandali fasted for 24 hours according to Baba's instruction and cooked food for the poor of nearby village, which Baba served until late in the evening. Afterwards, the men along with the villagers sang Upasni Maharaj's Aarti. A few Baba Mandalis had been sent to Sarkori for the celebration. Upasni Maharaj, seated in his bamboo cage, told Gulmai to perform his Aarti that day. During the puja ceremony, Maharaja put his legs out of the cage so devotees could touch his feet for darshan. When the crowd became large, Maharaj, for the first time in over a year, came out of the cage and sat on the drum underneath the pandal. Underneath the pandal.
See what that footnote says, Mona? Click it.
People coming. Okay.
1 second, Meher.
Yeah.
The drum
drum-
mentioned.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The drum mentioned may have been a kerosene or cooking oil cylindrical drum rather than a musical instrument. People coming for the darshan presented gifts to him, which Gulmai and Naja, Khodu's wife, collected and set aside after some crowd became unmanageable and the police had to be called to keep order and regulate the lines of people waiting for darshan. A palanquin procession in Maharaja's honor circled the ashram in the evening and bhajans were sung late into the night. The next day, many poor people were bathed and clothed since the beggars were to be bathed at Maharaja's relatives and Kanya's close women disciples wished to bathe him. Also, he refused, telling them, I do not want a bath. Bathe only the poor today. They insist on bathing him first. But he pointed to the destitute man standing nearby and said, if you want to bathe me, then bathe that leper that will tantamount bathing me. Immediately his women disciples held the leprous man and making him stand on a stool, began to bathe him with water that had been kept for the master. The Maharaja's own sister was helping, and when she embraced the leper, she began to weep. She saw her brother Maharaja in his face and bowed down to him. The leper was taken back by her action and said, "Mother, your God is there in the pinjara. Do not prostrate before me." After he was dressed, a cap adorned the leper's head, and puja was performed to him. Afterwards, Maharaja reconfirmed, "I was in that leper. It was I who was bathed."
Bathed.
Maharaja seemed pleased to have Baba's disciple around him. When they were seated near the cage, he pointed to them and asked Gulmai, "Do you love these persons?" She replied, "Yes, they are Baba, and Baba is yours. I love him. These people are also yours, so I love them as my children." Maharaja said, "That is good. Keep that attitude. You are real mother. Love all in the world as your children." Later, he told her, "I am hungry." Can you put it a little down, please? "I'm hungry." Oh, I can't see this bit.
I'll just read that line. Prepare bujiyas, fritters, or
Yeah.
chickpea flour and
Chickpea
vegetables.
flour and vegetables today. I like the way you prepare them with neem leaves. Mixed with neem leaves, chutney brings it to me, and I will share it with these children. Gulmai prepared the snack and took it to Maharaj. In the evening, at his hut, he ate a few and shared the rest with Baba followers. He then narrated the story of how he used to eat neem leaf chutney and also give it to others to eat, but they never felt a bit taste. He also told the story of how he had once asked a woman to prepare khichdi, dal and rice cooked together, mixed with excrement, which she did to prove her love for him. Before leaving Sarkori, Gulmai requested that Upasni Maharaj come to Ahmednagar for Rustam and Freni's wedding, but he did not favor the idea. Meanwhile, at Happy Valley, after the villagers departed late at night, Baba became restless and left with the Mandalis at 11:30 p.m., walking to Ahmednagar in the dark. They reached Khusru quarters at 2 a.m. Rustam and Freni's wedding was to be held in 4 days. Preparations were going on, and a number of guests were already arrived. Hostility had been brewing for
Hostility.
some days, and there was underwhelming tension in the compound since very few of the Parsis and Iranis believed Meher Baba's status as a guru. At that time, genuine knowledge of spirituality was limited among Zoroastrian community. The Parsis had no mystical tradition for acknowledging saints and advanced souls. As Hindus and Muslims, they looked upon Meher Baba and his followers as deluded, if not mad, and considered them fools to be mixed up in, they called it spiritual nonsense. Would somebody like to take it from there?
May I?
Will somebody read it from there?
Yeah. Can I?
Go ahead, Dinesh.
Yeah. Manjile Mim. The arrival of more out-of-town Parsis and Iranis from Bombay and Pune only added to the tension and criticism brewing among Gulmai's relatives. In the local newspapers too, more attacks against Meher Baba appeared. Thus, indignation against Meher Baba and his followers was the chief topic of conversation among the skeptical Zoroastrian guests. On the morning of the 4th May, while Adi was helping Baba with his daily ablutions, he informed him of the gossip going on behind his back and of the prevailing atmosphere of criticism. Adi made it clear that several people at Sarosh Manjil, his family's house, especially Gulmai's brother, Mindochar Shah, were inciting the other wedding guests against him. The night before, Adi reported there had been a loud, heated argument between Rustam and his uncle Mindochar Shah over Baba. Baba was already annoyed that Gulmai had not yet returned from Sakori as he had instructed. Hearing what Adi said, Baba abruptly left his room and stormed out of the compound without saying a word. That morning, some of the men were in the bathrooms washing and some were in the middle of breakfast. But the master's standing order was that wherever he went, the Mandli should follow immediately, no matter what they happened to be doing. Thus, hearing the cry that Baba was leaving, the Mandli hurried to follow him as quickly as they could, unaware of where he was going. Baba walked rapidly through the city with a serious expression. He stepped on Station Road with Behramji, Narvas, Padri, Masaji, Pendu, and Slamson in tow. At first, they thought he was going to the railway station, and they wondered about their belongings left behind at Khushru quarters. But after coming to the Saina River, Baba instead began walking north along the riverbed. They stopped by a well in a field and refreshed themselves. Then Baba turned back, crossed the bridge, and went to the railway station where they had a snack at the adjoining Dharamshala. Continuing after trudging 6 miles along the Dawn Road, they saw some dilapidated buildings and a small village nearby. When they entered the property, they came across a watchman who informed them that the structures had formerly housed a British military post and were now owned by Khan Sahib Kaikushru Irani of Ahmednagar. The nearby village was Arangaon. Mandli were surprised because although they had heard about Arangaon and Baba's intention of staying there, they did not know its location. Gulmai had only mentioned the name of the place and had planned to take Baba there after Rustam's marriage. Baba sat down under a neem tree by an old well. He pointed out the recently constructed tomb of Gilor Shah a few feet away, then observed the neglected buildings, a small house, sistrum, and a flagstone platform. The Mandli had neither a change of clothes, food, nor drinking water. with them.
No, we have to read the asterisks here. Yeah. First, yeah,
Footnote.
thank you.
Gilori Shah was still alive when Meher Baba Gilori Shah was still alive when Meher Baba first visited Arangaon during May 1923. He was a resident of Ahmednagar, but as mentioned earlier, he had his tomb built outside the city. Tomb is now part of Lower Mehrabad. The Mandli had neither a change of clothes, food, nor drinking water with them. Baba sent Behramji and Slamson to Arangaon village to fetch something to eat. Manjile Mim 415. The men were thirsty, but despite there being a well close at hand, they could not draw water from it, as there was no bucket. Behramji and Slamson approached a Christian and told him, "We are pilgrims in need of food. We will gladly pay you for whatever you can provide." The man's name was Gangaram Limbaji Pawar, and he explained that he could not afford anything more than bhakri and chutney, and that it would take some time to prepare. "It doesn't matter how long it takes," said Behramji, "as long as you will cook it. We will return in an hour. Meanwhile, kindly loan us a bucket, some rope, and a cup, so we may drink water." Gangaram obliged. They returned to where Baba was seated and refreshed themselves by drawing water from the well. Meanwhile, Rustam was quite upset when he heard about Baba and the Mandli's sudden departure from Khushru quarters. He rode on his motorcycle through the city, frantically looking for them. He stopped people on the main road, asking if they had seen a group of men going by. One person told him he had seen a group walking on the Dond road that morning. Rustam wasted no time in racing to Arangaon, where he found Baba and the Mandali sitting under the neem tree. With tears in his eyes, he asked Baba why he had come here. Baba replied, "I no longer wish to stay in Khushru quarters." "But what about my wedding?" Rustam pleaded. "You promised to attend." "I have changed my mind," was Baba's curt reply. "But it was only because of your advice that I agreed to marry in the first place," Rustam exclaimed. "If you don't attend the marriage, I won't go through with it." "What will your family, relations, and guests say if you cancel the wedding?" Baba asked. "What do I care for what they think or say?" Rustam declared. "I am only concerned with you. I am not concerned about others." Baba was pleased and calmed Rustam by explaining that though he would not be present at the wedding, he would come later to bless him and Freni. And he assured Rustam that the marriage was being performed according to his wish. In the meantime, he wished to remain where he was with the man. Baba then sent Rustam back to Ahmednagar with Masaji, instructing him to arrange to forward their luggage and trunks to Arangaon. After Rustam, Baba asked companions, "How do you find this place?" The man replied in laughter, "There is nothing here." In a serious tone, Baba asked, "What do you mean?" "Where the fakir stays, there is everything. There is nothing lacking in the company of the fakir."
Okay,
Thank you, Dinesh.
Yeah, pleasure. Jai Baba.
Rosalie, would you like to take up next? Anybody, please read. Thank
I can
Oh.
read.
Okay, I was muted.
Okay,
Uh,
Rosalie.
Starting Baramji.
Yeah.
Baramji returned to Gangaram's house and brought back the freshly baked bread, which all ate. They drank water by holding it in the hollow of their palms. Gangaram brought a kerosene lantern for them to use, and the master blessed him, saying, "May there always be light in your house." In the evening, their baggage having arrived, Baba and Gustaji slept on the flagstone platform under the neem tree, and the other men spread out their bedding rolls on the ground nearby and tried to sleep. It was a restless night, however. Dust was swirling in the hot winds of May. When they were spreading their bedding, a snake was seen and Padre killed it. As the watchman explained, during the First World War, a few army units had been stationed there. And it was these abandoned structures which Khan Sahib had bought at an auction after the military had discontinued using the property. Adjacent to the railroad tracks was a small, well-constructed stone building that had been the Army's post office. Other than this, the rest of the buildings were in a dilapidated state. On the east side of the road was a large bungalow-shaped building constructed in 1916, which had served as the officers' mess quarters. It was constructed of mud, clay, bricks, and contained two big halls, a bathroom and veranda on both sides. It had typical Shabad stone flooring and a Mangalore tiled roof. The next day, 5 May 1923, the post office building was swept and cleaned. And that night, Baba and the Mandalis stayed inside it. Baba decided they should move into the larger mess quarters across the road. So they began cleaning and repairing it. It was filled with heavy slabs of flooring, old utensils, and other discarded items of junk. Baba himself helped in the work, which lasted from morning to evening. On Sunday, the 6th of May, Ghani, Ramju, Sadashiv, Munchaji, Bajiftar arrived in Arangawan. These 5 men soon became aware that the daily routine in this deserted place was quite the reverse of what it had been at the Manzil in Bombay. Each man had to draw his own water from the well and had to wash his own clothes. Then for the whole day, the hard physical labor of clearing and restoring the mess quarters continued. Baba informed the 5 new arrivals. The life here is unpleasant and rough. All of you will have to labor like coolies and do farming or seek employment in Ahmednagar, which would mean cycling 6 miles both ways every day. It would be better for you 5 to find jobs in either Bombay, Pune, Lanavla, or elsewhere. Even though you live somewhere else away from me, if you carry out my orders, my connection with you will remain intact. Remember, I am everywhere. I am always with you. Ramji decided to rejoin Baba and the Mandali, but Sadashiv, Munchaji, and Bajiftar soon returned to their residences. Ghani commented that he had not yet made up his mind. Centuries ago, the Arangawan area was a forested area, and its name is derived from that. There are several legends connected with Arangawan's spiritual past. It is said that during the 9th or 10th century, a perfect master named Vithoba another name for Krishna, stayed at the village. After some time, a temple dedicated to him was constructed. Because of this temple, the small village also became known as Chota, Little Pandari, in reference to Pandapur, a celebrated place of pilgrimage for Hindus. Later, during the 17th century, a saint named Buaji Bua resided in Erangaon. Once during the festival of Ekadashi, literally the 11th day after a new moon, a sacred day dedicated to Lord Vishnu, a small crowd had assembled to celebrate the day in the saint's auspicious presence. The bhajan singing became ecstatic and in a rapture of divine intoxication, swaying his body to the fervent music, Buaji Bua began rubbing his palms together. But his disciples asked him the reason. When his disciples asked him the reason, the saint replied, I am extinguishing a large fire in the congregation tent at Pandapar. His disciples were startled when they witnessed his hands turning black like charcoal and smoke rising from them. A few days later, news came from Pandapar that there had been a tremendous fire on Ekadashi, which had been surprisingly easy to extinguish. The fire was found to have started at the time when Buaji Bua began rubbing his hands together. Buaji Bua is also known for having had himself buried alive, called Jivan Samadhi, in Vitoba's temple in Arangaon. His tomb is there to this day. Hindus go on pilgrimage to this temple tomb, and each year a festival is held outside the shrine. Baba changed his mind and decided to send the mandali to Rustam and Freni's wedding. He came with them from Arangaon to Ahmednagar on 8th May. Baba and Gustaji stayed on the top floor of Sarosh Manzil and the other mandali at Kushru quarters, where a large canopy had been erected and was beautifully decorated. Gulmai recalled that Baba and Gustaji occupied Maharaj's room downstairs, but in his diary, Ramju has written that Baba stayed in the room on the 3rd floor, which he had occupied previously. Baba told the men to render whatever help was needed. Under Baramji's direction, Baramji assigned them the work of assisting the cooks in cutting and cleaning vegetables for the wedding feast. For the mandali, working in the kitchen was quite humiliating, as they felt the glares of many wealthy guests, including Europeans as well as fellow Parsis and Iranis. But in life with a master, honor and insult are the same. The lesson to be learned was to go beyond caring about both. The Kasba Peth Mandali and Kak Sahib also came to Ahmednagar for the occasion. But the mandali were so occupied in the kitchen that there was barely time even to greet them. This was the first time since Manzilimim that all the various mandali from Pune, Lanavla, Bombay, and Ahmednagar had gathered together. However, they were allowed no opportunity to enjoy their reunion. Rustam's in-laws ignored Meher Baba's disciples, as their attention was devoted to seeing to the comfort of their more distinguished guest. On the evening of 9th May 1923, with great eclat, is that how you said eclat? And in regal style, Rustam and Freni were married according to Zoroastrian custom. That morning, Baba was dressed in a new suit of clothes, and puja was performed before him. The food served after the wedding ceremony was scrumptious. Choice fish for the guests and pure vegetarian style for Baba and the Mandali. However, Baba became upset when he discovered that the spoons and ladies used by the cooks, ladles, I'll say that, I'll reread that. Baba became upset when he discovered that the spoons and ladles used by the cooks for the fish had gotten switched, and consequently, he forbade the men to eat the meal. Needless to say, the order was disappointing. A European band and various entertainments were enjoyed by all the other 200 guests. Baba did not attend the wedding. However, the couple came to Saroj Manzil afterwards, where Baba blessed and embraced them. A private Qawwali program was staged for Baba. The Mandali and a few selected members of Rustam's family, led by Yasin Qawwal, who had been brought from Bombay just for the occasion. The following afternoon, there was another Qawwali program. Baba thoroughly enjoyed the music. The wine of the divine song flowed freely during such programs, especially Qawwali programs by such an accomplished singer as Yasin. Baba himself was an exceptional singer and always took great interest in such programs and listened intently to the singer. After the music, Baba discussed the future of his Mandali. It was decided that the Kasba Peth Mandali should remain in Pune and that Kak Saheb should go to Bombay and stay with Munchiji and Syed Saheb. The remaining 14 men would stay with Baba at Arangawan. They were Adi, Asma, Babu Sagarwala, Baidul, Barsop, Baramji, Gustaji, Jalbai, Masaji, Nervous, Pendu, Padri, Ramju, and Slamson.
All right, thank you, Rosalie. Maybe we can have another reader. Eugene, would you like to take over here?
I'd love to, but let's listen to Mikal.
Okay, Mikal, your turn.
Eugene, you were asked, so you can read and I will read later. Thank you.
If you insist.
Yeah, it's nice of you. I appreciate it.
Page 419, Manzilimim, 1923. One of Rustam's aunts, Pilamai Irani, had come from Karachi for the wedding. After meeting Baba at Sakori 2 years before, she was consumed in the fire of his divine love and became his devotee. During this occasion, Pilamai told Baba that she was ready to surrender her life to him and wanted to stay with him, but he persuaded her to return to Karachi. Karachi. She reluctantly agreed on the condition that he visit her there, which he promised. The result of this, and the natural way in which the master accomplished his work, was to gradually unfold. On the surface, it looked as if Pilamai invited Baba to grace her house, but the master alone knows the secret way in which he reveals his intentions. Those who were continuously with Meher Baba had some understanding of how he manipulated events, making them seem quite natural. And occasionally, the Mandali would fathom the hidden meaning behind the outward expressions of his work and statements. A dispute again arose between some of Gulmai's relatives over Khan Saheb's property. Some warned that Meher Baba would usurp Khan Saheb's land in Arangaon if immediate steps were not taken to prevent this. Baba came to know of the heated quarrel and vacated Sarosh Manzil on Friday morning, 11 May 1923. This time, Baba proceeded directly to the railway station, but then turned onto a dirt road. After passing the Sina River, he stopped at a deserted graveyard where he gathered the Mandali around him and said that they would reside there. It was an odd choice, but the Mandali agreed. But Baba soon left and started walking toward the local Dharamshala, a rest house run by the municipality. He decided to stay there until a suitable accommodation could be located. Later, Baba remarked that he had definitely decided not to remain in Ahmednagar or Arangaon any longer. The Mandali were hungry. Vegetables were purchased and cooked in the Dharamshala, and all ate them for dinner with bread from a bakery. Baba's prolonged fast, which he had begun in Manzil Imam, continued throughout.
Raise page, please.
Baba's prolonged fast, which he had begun in Manzil Imam. I think we have to go back a page. Or are we here? Let's see. Okay, got it. Thank you, Mona Ji. Baba's prolonged fast, which he had begun in Manzil Imam, continued throughout this period. After the meal, Baramji went to Arangaon and brought all their luggage by bullock cart, along with firewood to be used for cooking. Gustaji and Baramji were under Baba's order to eat only one meal a day at 11 a.m. and to drink water only between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Soon after, Ghani left Ahmednagar by train, as Baba instructed him to stay in Bombay until he was called. The next day, Baba told the Mandali to pack everything in trunks except their necessary clothing, bedding, and a few indispensable items, and then take them to Kushru quarters to be stored until they returned. Kushru quarters was about half a mile away from the Dharamshala, and all the Mandali, who were dressed in good clothes, labored like common coolies as they walked through the city, carrying the trunks on their heads and backs. Pedestrians on the road stared at them in surprise, wondering who these men were. Some passers-by sneered at them, but the men had to trudge on, finally depositing their heavy loads in Kushu quarters and then returning to the Dharamshala. There had been exchanges of bitter words and criticism towards Meher Baba by certain Zoroastrians. Gulmai felt disheartened by Baba's departure from her house due to the hostile and disrespectful attitude of her relatives. She felt disappointed because she had invited the master to set up his headquarters on her husband's property at Arangao. Like Shireen Mai, Gulmai was destined to play a certain role. Who can measure the pain behind a mother's sorrow? Khan Saheb was moved by his wife's devotion and hastened to the Dharamshala to try to correct the situation and appease Baba's feelings. He pleaded, "On behalf of my family, I beg your forgiveness, Baba. Accept my prayer to remain in Arangao." Gulmai is beside herself with grief over what has happened. Baba answered, "A fakir has no home, and at the same time, he has everything. He only stays in one particular place for certain reasons. I do not wish to create differences or divide your family by staying in Arangao." Khan Saheb earnestly pleaded with him to reconsider. And finally, Baba agreed to return. So after a 3-day stay in the Dharamshala, the men, led by Baba, walked back to Arangaon on Sunday, 13 May, and stayed again in the deserted post office building. Gulmai's sister, Sunamasi Irani, her husband, Kaikushru Masa, and their daughter, Khorshed, had come from Bombay to attend Rustam's wedding. On one occasion, Baba advised Sunamasi and Khorshed to stay in Ahmednagar so they could regularly come for his darshan at Arangaon. Pilamai was staying too, and she also went to Arangaon for Baba's darshan daily. On one occasion, he told her, "Gulmai is my spiritual mother, but remember, you are my spiritual sister. So you should stay in close contact with me."
All right, thank you, Eugene. Michal, would you take it from here?
Do we have time? Do we have time?
We have time for a couple more pages, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Thus the master started gathering a close circle of women disciples. Franny's only sibling, her sister Mera, had not attended the wedding. While preparations were being made for Franny's marriage, Meher was staying in Sakori with Upasni Maharaj. Under his guidance and along with her devotees, with other devotees, she was engaged in the labor work of carrying stones, earth, and other building materials on her head and in a gamla. Construction work was in progress in building the Sakori ashram, and all of Maharaj's kanyas were helping in the work. Although Mera came from a wealthy family and had never done such lowly tasks in her life, she did not hesitate to share in such labor under the spiritual direction of Maharaj. As the day of the wedding approached, Mera's knee suddenly became swollen. On this pretext, Maharaj did not allow her to attend the wedding in Ahmednagar, and Mehera willingly abided by his decision. But the real reason for this disinclination to send Mera and for the mysterious swelling on her knee was learned later when her mother Daulat May discovered that certain relatives had come to the wedding with the intention of discussing their son's marriage to Mera. A perfect master is omniscient and knows the past and the future. Knowing Mera's destiny, Upasni Maharaj could not allow her to go to Ahmednagar. Mera was already spoken for and would soon join her divine Prince Charming forever. About a week after the wedding, when Daulat Mai went again to Sakoi, Maharaj relented and permitted Mera to leave. While Mera was in Ahmednagar, she and her mother were called to Mehrabad to meet Baba and discuss Mera's marriage proposal. At the post office, Baba asked Mera if she wanted to marry, and Mera replied demurely that she did not, and Baba was pleased. Erase the page or something. Mera and her mother then left for Pune, where they visited Babajan regularly. In Arangaon, the repair work of cleaning the officers' mess quarters, applying plaster over the deteriorating mud brick walls, and fixing the roof recommenced soon after Baba and the Mandali returned. Baidul was the main mason. Even in this isolated location, there was little time to oneself. The master's orders came first. Each man became more involved with his duties than his own person. Right after the Mandali finished their breakfast of bread and tea, they would be occupied with this work the entire day. Some would draw water out of the well and carry it. Some would prepare the clay mud plaster, and others would apply it to the walls. Next page, please. Thank you. At noon, there would be an hour's respite for a lunch of rice and dal. In the evening, dinner consisted of a potato dish with bread. For long intervals during this period, Baba would fast only on liquids, taking no solid food. After the repairs were finished, the structure was whitewashed using handmade brushes. Being unaccustomed to painting with a harsh lime solution, the men developed severely blistered hands, and despite applying oil and fomenting them, the pain lasted for several days. By the afternoon of 22nd May, the mess quarters was finally ready for occupancy. The Mandali were exhausted and thought Baba might defer their move until the following day, but Baba wanted them to shift at once. The post office was emptied of their belongings. Baba and the Mandali, each including Baba, carrying his own bedding and baggage, moved into the mess quarters. Baba selected a particular spot for each man to spread out his bedding. On the right side, a small room was reserved for Baba. Upasni Maharaj's photograph was hung there with a stick of burning incense placed before it. By evening, everything was unpacked and arranged. The cooking pots and utensils were kept in the kitchen, the water chattis filled, the personal effects placed in their corner, the beddings laid out on the floor. At night, Baba was seated on his mattress on the floor, leaning against the wall, as two of the Mandalis sat on either side of him, massaging his legs and feet. As they were preparing for bed, Gushtaji felt something soft under his pillow. He lifted it and found a snake curled up under it. Padri killed it. Immediately, they wondered from where it had come, since no snakes were seen while repairing the building, and Gustaji had spread his bedding after thoroughly sweeping the area. They had killed some scorpions, but had not seen any snakes. Baba decided in order to be on the safe side. We should move back to the post office right away. So all again shouldered their belongings and bedding rolls and, in the dark, trudged back to their original shelter. While they were making themselves comfortable, Baba said, Arangaon is not such a nice place. It is not good to remain here now. Think of some other place which is free of snakes and scorpions. Several places were mentioned, but none was approved by Baba. Pendu then suggested traveling to Quetta, where he had been living prior to Manzil Amin. Baba liked this prospect, since he had promised Pilamai to visit Karachi. Baba later concluded, not only should we leave Rangoon, but we should also leave Ahmednagar district, Bombay province, and India altogether, and go to Persia, Iran, via Quetta and Karachi. Page up, please. Finished. Just anyone take this page down so we know.
Yeah, I
where to
got it. Was
continue?
that the end of the page, Mona?
No, it's not.
Let me see.
It wasn't the end. But it's when they plan to go on a trip and leave
All right.
Rangoon.
Yeah, there's one more paragraph. We can pick it up next time as it's already past 1:30.
Yeah.
And you know that episode where Mara didn't go to the wedding. That was a lot more drawn out story. I was
Yeah.
surprised that there was so little of it in there.
Yeah.
For anyone
me
who
too.
doesn't know, Dalit Mai came to Sikori to get Mara to bring her to the wedding, and Upasni didn't give her any sort of order. He just, like Baba does, naturally, casually suggested. And Dalit Mai, knowing that when a master gives an order or even a suggestion of an order, it should be followed. So that's the reason that she agreed and didn't take Mara.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then there was quite a meeting between about 5-6 women, including Shireen Mai and Mara and Dalit Mai and a few others. And all the women were saying, we had a nice, a proposal, a good boy, and I don't know, somebody said no, Mara didn't want it. They said, okay, we'll find another one. And finally, Mara got the courage to speak up and said, I don't want to marry. And Baba
she
said,
didn't.
basically, case closed. Don't mention it
No,
again.
she didn't have the
Nope.
courage. No, it wasn't like that. They said, okay, not this guy, then another guy. And then Baba said, did you ever ask Mira? Did you ask the girl herself? Why don't you ask her? So then they asked her. And then she blurted out that she doesn't want to get married. And so he said, well, then you have to honor that. So because she was very shy, she wouldn't speak
Yes.
up by herself. I wanted to say another thing, that I think that the person who gave, the first person that gave them food and the bucket and the light, he's called Powwow. And Valu, the one who used to be with the ladies during the seclusion on the hill, and the one who planted all the banyan trees on the path for Baba, she was called Valu Pavar. And maybe that was her father. I'm not sure, but it maybe was her father, or her family, because the same family name. And another thing,
you know what, Michal, let me interrupt. I have a feeling that might not be so, because I believe that guy was Christian, and I don't think Valu was.
who
Knows? But
then-
anyway, I also think he became Baba's first Christian disciple.
yeah.
Marvin,
And then
perhaps we should stop recording.
You're
Oh, yeah.
absolutely right. My mistake.
Good. And there are not so many Christians in Arangoon. I know there are very, very few Christians.